special board meeting to order on June 26, 2020 at 8 o'clock. A brief time of reflection. Thank you. You've all received the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve it?
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Jody, Sunshine, and Public Records.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board. This is a special meeting of the board to talk about Scherer Unit number 4 has been properly noticed, and we are allowed to have this WebEx meeting, even by the governor's order extending the ability to have WebEx type meetings has been extended through the month of July. We have a quorum present, and minutes will be taken of the meeting, and it's being recorded as well. So we're in good order to proceed.
Right. Comments from the public. Do we have to wait for 10 minutes?
Unfortunately, we will have to allow public comment after the 8:10 mark. You can start the presentation of the discussion, but we will have to ask at the 8:10 mark if anyone has any comments, because this will be an action item meeting in which the board will be making a final determination or recommendation, or actually voting on this action item. And so we will need to allow for the public to be able to weigh in on this decision. Right, and so we will need to, at least at the 8:10 mark, ask whether or not there is any public comments to be made. But I think we can go forward with the presentation if that's your desire, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I think it is. And if you'll make sure I don't go to sleep on the time, I would appreciate it. Is Danny Becton here? We'd love to have his comments. I haven't seen him.
Thank you, Chair Baker. I am here this morning. I really don't have anything other than to say that the City Council did pass the bill on Tuesday night that did provide citizens within Duval County the ability to receive grant funding that should hopefully help inspire them to engage with JEA to take care of their past due and current debts. So hopefully that will help, and we can get the payments to JEA caught up for our customers. So thank you for allowing me to comment this morning.
Well, and thank you and all the council for your help. That's really important and something we all care about deeply. Joe, why don't you get us started, and then we'll interrupt you at 8:10.
Thank you, Chair Baker and JEA Board. I'd like to turn it over to Bobby Stein. Bobby Stein would like to make some opening remarks, Chair Baker.
Thank you.
So Chair Baker, I just want to make a few comments. When I was asked to join this board, one of the things that Mayor Curry and Council President Wilson was very concerned about was our carbon footprint. And they said, make sure that we focused on that. So I give them credit to get us to where we are today. I started working with Joe on this before I got on the board, and this has been a long process. And we had a couple alternatives here. One, stay where we are, and Florida Power and Light was looking at selling their position with 75% and more. And I want to give credit to Joe and Jody and Larry, who spent a tremendous amount of time with me, and also Paul giving us great direction when he joined. And I think we ended up at a good place here, which was number one, retiring this unit with Florida Power and Light will give us $191 million net present value savings, we'll have a 10-year natural gas relationship here with a fixed price, and we'll have a 10-year option in solar. And as a lot of you know, that a lot of solar has been put online, and a lot of the tax credits will be expiring at the year 10, the 10th year, which will give us, I think, good pricing there. And with retiring this unit, and just think about this, guys, we will have 1 million ton reduction in our carbon footprint. And that is, I think, extraordinary if you think about where JEA wants to head. So with that, and I also want to mention that, I met with Eric Szilagyi, the CEO of Florida Power and Light, and make sure he knew, and Marty mentioned this, a lot of people also the community mentioned this. I want to make sure he knew that JEA was not for sale, but we've had a long relationship with Florida Power and Light, and we want to work with them on projects that make sense. And I think with Joe and Paul, they'll reiterate that I couldn't be more emphatic that we are not for sale, but when it makes sense, we will absolutely work with Florida Power and Light. And this is an area that made sense because the option was to sell this to a hedge fund, and we'd be a minority partner with a hedge fund, and their interests were not in line with us. So again, Chairman Baker, I just want to reiterate the hard work. Without investment bankers, I think, did an incredible job to get to this point. So with that, I'll hand it over to Joe.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Landon, we have the slides up for those viewing via WebEx. I believe it's slide 22, Jody. Jody always is the arbiter of slides.
I don't have it up yet. Hang on.
Oh, Jody, I think it's slide 22. So, Landon, if you could go to the next page, please. Thank you. The retirement of Scherer Unit 4 provides benefits in the following areas: financial, operational, and environmental. Next slide, please, Landon. Just a little history behind the Scherer electric generating facility. It's the largest coal plant in the country, comprised of 848 megawatt unit, and we have our shares of unit number 4. The plant is located in Macon, Georgia, and operated by Georgia Power. The unit is fueled with very low cost Powder River Basin coal from Wyoming. And as Bobby pointed out, JEA has just under 24% share with Florida Power and Light, 76% in change. It's 198 megawatts net to JEA annually. And the co-owners of the other 3 units include, as I mentioned, Georgia Power as the majority owner, Oglethorpe Power, MEAG Power. Gulf Power's share is now owned actually by Florida Power and Light and the city of Dalton, Georgia. Interesting that Scherer has long been the lowest cost dispatch unit, but based on natural gas prices today and prices actually for our other fuels, Scherer is now the most expensive dispatch unit. So that has flipped over in the past couple of years. And in addition, Scherer faces a number of uphill battles with respect to environmental regulations, particularly those surrounding the management of coal ash. The next slide, please, Landon. So the proposal from Florida Power and Light has 4 main components. As Bobby mentioned, we did have a sale on the table at one point, but retirement became the most economic option. We're also going to replace the Scherer Unit number 4 capacity with a long-term 20-year power purchase agreement based on FPL's natural gas combined cycle unit. it's a system product, and I'll get into that in more detail in a couple of minutes. They are also providing a 10-year natural gas hedge that'll effectively fix the price on natural gas for the first 10 years of the PPA. And we'll avoid future environmental costs on unit number 4. We'll still have the ash responsibility, and I'll address that in a few minutes, but the ongoing environmental cost by shutting the unit down, we will avoid. From a financial standpoint, the current net capital asset value is approximately $122 million. That figure was as of May 31st. That represents 5% of the electric and bulk power system net capital assets, just under 5%. And then the terms with FPL for the transaction are substantively complete. And I see it as 8:10. We could stop there for the public comment.
Let's do that. Thank you, Joe. That's a
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Joe. Just to confirm, Ms. Jody Brooks, you want me to go ahead and run through the technology overview for public comment at this time?
Yes, and I think there's 3 different methods of which we can get public comment, but if you can read the instructions again, for those that may just be joining for the first time on the WebEx, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Once again, we're going to go ahead and review the WebEx technology. My name is Landon Todd, and for those that are joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device, such as a smartphone or tablet, you may move around your screen and we'll see a series of buttons at the bottom. The very first one that you may notice looks like a red microphone with a slash through it. If it's red, it means you are muted for the majority of this meeting unless recognized to speak. If you are recognized to speak or asked to provide a comment, you will click on that button and it will turn dark gray or black. This will mean that you are unmuted and everyone can hear you. I do ask that you use the mute option throughout this meeting. Also, if you're participating in this meeting, you can look 3 more buttons over to the right and you'll find an icon that looks like a person. If you click on that, it will bring up the participant list. If you're on a mobile device, it will pull up in front of everything, and if you're joined on the desktop machine, it will come up on the right side of your screen. This will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined this meeting. Also, I have enabled the chat capability in today's special board meeting. If you touch your screen or scroll next to the person icon, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up the chat window. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded and that I ask you to please be professional. However, if you run into any difficulties with WebEx or in this meeting, you can chat me directly or type comments to everyone. Also, for those that would like to zoom in on any of the photos or charts that are in today's presentation, I would like to call you to the zoom in feature located on the left-hand side of your desktop. If you move your mouse around, you'll see 2 icons that look like a magnifying glass, one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. This will allow you from your desktop computer to be able to zoom in and zoom out. Now, those are the major controls of WebEx. Now we're going to go right into public comments. For today's meeting, for public comments, we will be using the raised hand feature. If you're using the WebEx client, this feature is located in the participant window I just mentioned. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and on the right, you will see a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting you know that you'd like to be recognized for comment. For those that have called in directly, there's 2 additional ways you can be notify me for comment. The first one is by pressing *3 on your phone. This will raise your hand inside WebEx. However, if you're unable to do that, you may press *6 to unmute your line. If you unmute your line, it is very important that you state your name so that everyone may hear who is speaking before you proceed with your comment. As we go through, I am the moderator today's meeting and have the capability of muting your line. Now, since it's 8:14, I'm going to go right into and ask Madrika if there's been any public comments received via email. Madrika, has there been anything that we need to read into the record?
I have not received any public comments via email.
Thank you very much. For those that have used the WebEx technology, please go ahead and use the raise hand feature at this time. Seeing none in the participant window, I'm moving on to the second portion of this. If you haven't been able to raise your hand, if you have called in directly, which we do have 2 individuals that have joined the meeting via telephone, if you would, go ahead and press *6 to unmute your line. Okay. With that, I do not see anyone in the chat window as well. Mr. Chair, or Joe, I'll turn it back over to y'all.
Thank you, Landon. If we could move to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, Scherer is now the most expensive dispatch unit, approximately $6 per megawatt higher than Northside 1 and 2, and $10 per megawatt higher than combined cycle energy. So replacing the Scherer capacity with a PPA from Florida Power and Light will save approximately $8 million per year. We'll also receive consideration in the form of a upfront payment from FPL that again includes a cash compensation component. We'll avoid costs associated with future upgrades and compliance CapEx, but we'll still be responsible for its current environmental conditions, but we're in that place right now, and that's principally ash. Next slide, please. So the Scherer capacity and energy will be replaced by what we call a slice of the system product. It's a 20-year PPA from Florida Power and Light. The benefits include no outage schedule on a system product. It diversifies generation, including transmission from the south. We'll continue to maintain our transmission rights at the Florida-Georgia interconnection. It diversifies fuel supply, and that we'll be using the Sable Trail pipeline. The product includes all combined cycles on FPL's fleet, and they are the most efficient and lowest cost unit in their fleet. There's no restrictions or must-run conditions on taking energy. Currently, if either FPL or JEA elect to operate the unit, the other owner must take at least their minimum load share of Unit 4. As Bobby pointed out, there's a very attractive option to convert solar energy after 10 years. Next slide, please. On the environmental front, we'll avoid future costs of environmental upgrades estimated as follows. The effluent limitation guidelines projected to cost approximately $8.2 million. We'll still remain obligated for the ash pond cost, approximately $30 million from 21 to 29, and another $19 million in change from 2030 to 2066. But the environmental benefits of replacing Scherer Unit 4 are the lower CO2 carbon dioxide emissions. Bobby mentioned just for Unit 4, we're projected to have over 1 million tons between fiscal year 2020, actually calendar year 2020 and 2024. Another 300,000 tons we expect to eliminate just in reducing output from Northside Units 1 through 3. So we're projecting about 1.3 million tons per year less emissions, which is a 64% reduction from 2007. So it's a significant reduction in our carbon footprint. Next slide, please. The proposed transaction has multiple benefits to JEA, delivering approximately $191 million in PV, as Bobby mentioned. That's split fairly evenly between the upfront consideration and the ongoing savings from the FPL power purchase agreement. We could take that cash and defease approximately $89 million in outstanding bonds that we have issued for Scherer at the moment. We'll replace coal generation with lower cost and lower carbon power purchase agreement with Florida Power and Light. Again, with a system product, we'll have no outages to consider. So from a planning standpoint, offers great flexibility. We avoid future Scherer environmental compliance costs. And again, at least a 1.3 million ton reduction in CO2 emissions. Next slide, please, Landon. So the next steps, we are asking for authorization from the JEA board to negotiate with FPL on the closure of Scherer Unit number 4, a replacement 20-year power purchase agreement based on combined cycle natural gas system product with the option to convert to solar after 10 years. And the transaction will involve a very competitive 10-year natural gas hedge transaction that we have vetted with the Energy Authority. Again, an extremely competitive hedge. And these actions will require JEA board approval. So with that, Chair Baker, I'll turn it back over to you and ask for any questions.
Mr. Chairman and Joe, if I could just add on to Joe's presentation and ask everyone to sort of direct it to page 6 in the diligent board book. We have a share transaction financial summary, and in that it puts in context the calculation of the $191 million net present value, and points directly to the cooperation agreement consideration payment, which is the upfront payment Joe referenced of $100 million. And this sort of lays out really the moving parts on that schedule. And I'm not sure, Landon, if we have that and if you can bring that up to the screen. But if not, I'll talk to it. It does have, and the way we calculated these numbers was to look at projections of the total cost to operate the unit over the next 20 years, and net present value back those flows, cash flows. And we have very good estimates and ability to project these costs as we've been running the plant now for 30 years. And that would cost us $1.08 billion in net present value dollars just to continue to operate over 20 years. Then went and isolated that number, but then went on to calculate what replacement power would be, including the purchase power agreement that Joe referenced with FPL, the 20 years. And the cost that we have there is a total cost or projection of $783 million. All of the capacity charges are locked in contractually, and so is the transmission. We've got the back end of the back 10 years of gas that is, I'll say, somewhat at risk, although given the solar option and the pricing in that area, we feel really good about almost the 20-year view of locking in our costs. And it's, we've got an equal risk in terms of coal 10 years out as to whether or not we'll even be able to run that unit, given some pending legislative changes in D.C. with respect to CO2 emissions. So the replacement power is $783 million. There are ongoing deferred ownership costs. We will be responsible because we will still own the unit. The unit will still stand but not operate and not be maintained. It will be waiting full decommission of the entire plant share. All 4 units will happen at one time. They could be out as long as 20 years. There is a protocol in the investor-owned arena that decommissioning costs are always estimated and then booked accordingly. So we've used our estimate of decommissioning costs, which have been vetted both by FPL as well as the other participants in the plant. We think we have good control there. The fixed costs are just ongoing maintenance costs, security costs for the plant. Ash costs, which Joe referenced, is the cost to remediate the ash ponds. There's no further addition to the ash ponds. That's now being carted off the facility and landfill. But the remediation of the 30 years of ash pond will occur over the next 20 or 40 years, I guess, and we're optimistic that number is going to be locked in. There is a risk there that a legislative change or an environmental change could increase that cost, but this is where the estimate stands now. And Joe mentioned debt service. We've got the included in here the full balance of the debt service in the schedule. So the total cost to replacement power plus the ongoing and deferred ownership costs, $989 million, giving us a transaction value of $91 million plus the $100 million cooperation agreement consideration or payment to the $191 million in net present value.
One thing
I thought that was important to just sort of.
One thing I'll add there, Paul, is that Florida Power and Light is committed to work with us and see if we can reduce these legacy costs, which you know, don't count on them, but there is a possibility, and they have a bigger piece of this deal, and they're more committed to reduce these costs as we are. Sorry.
That's absolutely correct, and that's right. We're locked at the hip there in terms of FPL, in terms of managing these costs and really realizing this value out of this transaction. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think from a staff perspective, we're done and available for questions.
Thank you all. This is a great presentation. It's very clear and it's amazingly beneficial. Are there questions from anybody, and especially Joe or Tom or Marty, if you have to leave?
No question, sir. I really appreciate Paul walking us through the comparative operating costs. And again, considerable advantages here that only stand to get better if we're able to work with FP&L. So thank you for walking us through that detail. That would have been my question. You answered it.
Hey, Mr. Chair, Joe DiSalvo.
Hey, Joe.
Just real quick for Paul and Joe. So, Paul, thanks for that great overview. And Joe, you talked about the risks. So just so I got it, it sounds like the risks are very low overall, and also that the risks out there appear to be mechanisms to mitigate because of FPL working with us. So just so I'm not assuming anything, it sounds like the risk on this is pretty low. Is that correct?
Yes, I think we've isolated and removed the big risk, and that was the gas price, operating price. And I will tell you that it is more risky to operate an isolated coal plant in today's environment versus taking energy off a slice of system, which is directed. Really, the energy comes from all of the units of FPL. And we've got a separate gas line coming in stable, which we're not relying on. So it's been a good diversity of risk. Of course, with any transaction in this business, there is risk, but this is much lower operating and environmental risk than what we have in Scherer. Yes.
And I'd also add, Paul, a shout out to Scott Brown at Florida Power and Light and Larry Fink's staff here at JEA, who have been instrumental in the dismantlement and remediation of St. Johns River Power Park. And they are hawkish in terms of their oversight of Scherer Unit number 4. So a shout out to those gentlemen as well.
And I'll just say quickly, I remember from my past board experience when number 4 was the darling of the fleet, and now it's kind of sad. I feel like we're both aging, Plant Scherer number 4 and myself, because we're moving on to greater things. Bobby, I want to thank you for addressing my concerns with FP&L. I expressed those at our most recent board meeting, so thank you very much for addressing those. I think, candidly, this is a win for the environment, and it's a win for the ratepayers. And I appreciate everybody's negotiations on this. I think we've come a long way from when we originally saw this. So thank you, Bobby, Paul, team, Joe, everybody else for your leadership. I think this is a very favorable proposal.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Thanks for Bobby and Joe and Paul and the entire team, all the way back to Mr. Stein's opening comments. I mean, this clearly, all cost advantages even aside, this clearly represents, in my mind, a material step forward in environmental stewardship. So I'm proud of the work that you've done and deeply grateful.
I know you've got an 8:30 stop. One question I have, the last page of our Brooks says next steps are to authorize negotiation with FP&L. Is that what the motion should be, or it should be to approve this action?
Mr. Chair, if I could, can I read what I believe the motion should be?
Please.
This is Jody Brooks, and the board, it should be that the JEA shall enter into a cooperation agreement with FP&L for the closure of the jointly owned Scherer coal-fired electric generating station located in Macon, Georgia, and a PPA with FP&L for the replacement of the capacity and energy. And the board will delegate to the interim managing director the authority to execute the cooperation agreement, the PPA, and all other transactional documents required for the closure of Scherer.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second, but can I make an addendum that says with presuming no material changes from what we discussed today?
That would be fine. And I read that motion from a resolution that didn't catch up with the board package materials, but there is a whereas clause in the resolution that talks about substantially the same form of the attached draft agreement. When the resolution comes to you as secretary, you'll see that it has to be in substantially the same form as it's been presented today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does the motion maker accept that change?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then I'll agree with it as well as the seconder.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Great work, everybody. It's unanimously approved. This is really a huge step forward for JEA. And I thank all that are involved, especially Bobby and Paul. If there's nothing further to come before the meeting, we're adjourned.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good
weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.